You wake, not to an alarm, but to a quality of light. It is the soft, filtered light of morning, pushing through heavy velvet curtains in a New York City mansion, sometime around 1895. The air is still. The only sound is the muffled clop of a horse-drawn carriage on the cobblestones far below. You are wealthy. Not just comfortable, but Gilded Age wealthy. A kind of wealth that builds private railroads and funds entire museums. We've all seen the pictures, read the accounts of the staggering banquets from this era. Dinners with live swans swimming in ponds on the tabletops, cigarettes wrapped in $100 bills, parties where guests on horseback ate from silver troughs. These were spectacles of consumption, designed to stun and dominate the social landscape. They were weapons in a very real war of status. But that was the performance for the public. That was for the newspapers. What about the day after? What about a Tuesday? When there are no guests, no reporters, no rivals to impress across the table. What does your life, your plate, look like then? Is it possible that behind the marble facades and armies of servants, there was an upper-class version of a simple, casual meal? Or was the performance of wealth a machine that never, ever stopped running? That is the question we are here to explore. What did you, a titan of industry or a railroad heiress, actually eat, every single day? Forget the swan-filled ponds for a moment. Let's pull back the velvet curtains on the quiet, relentless, and often bizarre reality of the Gilded Age plate. What would you want on your table for a simple family dinner? Perhaps more importantly, what would you be forbidden from leaving off it? Let us begin with the first meal of the day. Breakfast. The word itself suggests something simple, a breaking of the fast. But in your world, nothing is ever truly simple. You do not stumble into the kitchen to make coffee. In fact, you may have never seen your own kitchen. Your day begins with a gentle pull on a tasseled cord next to your bed. This bell pull does not make a sound in your room. It is a silent command, translated into a jangling summons in the servants' hall 3 floors below. While you attend to your morning ablutions, a silent, intricate ballet is already underway. A housemaid has entered, noiselessly, to draw your curtains and ensure the fire in your bedroom grate is lit, taking the chill from the air. Downstairs, in the vast, steamy, coal-scented world of the kitchen, your breakfast is being assembled. Not a breakfast. An array of breakfasts. You descend the grand staircase, the polished wood cool beneath your hand, and enter the morning room. It is smaller than the formal dining room, a concession to intimacy. The table, however, is anything but small. It is laid for you, perhaps for your spouse, with a dazzling landscape of whitest linen, heaviest silver, and thinnest porcelain. And the food. Oh, the food. Forget your modern bowl of cereal or single slice of avocado toast. This is a fortress of carbohydrates and protein. Before you is a veritable buffet, a daily declaration of dominance over scarcity. There is a silver chafing dish, kept warm by a small flame, containing scrambled eggs, impossibly fluffy and rich with cream. Next to it, another dish holds grilled kidneys, or perhaps slices of savory mutton chop. A platter of thick sliced bacon, cured and smoked on an estate you own, sits beside a plate of glistening sausages. But that is just the beginning. There are fish. Of course there are fish. Perhaps some broiled mackerel, or a finnan haddie poached in milk. On a tiered stand, you find the breads. Not just toast, but a basket of hot rolls, muffins, perhaps some griddle cakes with a pitcher of maple syrup sourced from your lands in Vermont. A silver toast rack holds thin, crisp slices of Melba toast, a delicate counterpoint to the heavier fare. And the fruit. A pyramid of it. Hothouse grapes, so perfect they look like glass. Sliced oranges and grapefruits, a testament to the new refrigerated railroad cars that bring the bounty of Florida and California right to your door. There might be a compote of stewed prunes, considered essential for digestive regularity, a constant concern for a class that ate so much and moved so little. You take your seat. A footman, statue still behind your chair, pulls it out for you and pushes it in. The butler, a figure of immense authority, will approach and ask what you desire. You do not serve yourself. You simply point, you murmur. The eggs, a sausage, and some of the fish, please, Jennings. He will plate it for you, with practiced, economical movements. He will pour your coffee, a dark, rich brew, into a delicate cup, and another footman will provide the hot milk and sugar. You eat in relative silence. The newspapers, ironed to prevent the ink from soiling your fingers, are folded neatly by your plate. You read of stock market fluctuations and political scandals while consuming a caloric load that a laborer in the factory you own would burn over a 12-hour shift. This is not a meal for fuel. This is a ritual. It is the first act of the day's performance. It establishes the order of your world, you command, and the world provides. There is no casual here. This quiet, private breakfast is as formal and laden with meaning as any state dinner. It is the breakfast of empires, a daily reminder that you are at the very top of the food chain. Congratulations. You've just consumed more for your first meal than most families in your city will see in 2 days. And the day has only just begun. After the profound undertaking of breakfast, the morning unfolds at a pace dictated by your gender and station. If you are the man of the house, the patriarch, you are likely whisked away in your carriage to Wall Street or your downtown office. There, you will navigate the treacherous currents of finance and industry, a world of abstract power and immense consequence. Your lunch will be taken at a private club, a masculine sanctuary of leather, cigar smoke, and dark wood. These clubs, like the Union Club or the Knickerbocker, were extensions of the home, but with a different set of rules. Here, the performance shifted from domestic dominance to professional camaraderie among peers. The food was robust, straightforward, and decidedly male. Great joints of roast beef, thick steaks, turtle soup, and mountains of oysters on the half-shell. It was heavy, substantial fare, washed down with brandy and whiskey. Deals worth millions, deals that could build a railroad or ruin a rival, were made over plates of mutton and glasses of sherry. It was a working lunch only in the sense that the work of consolidating power among the elite never truly stopped. But if you are the woman of the house, your world is the home, and your work is the intricate, exhausting business of society. Your morning is consumed by consultations. First, with the housekeeper, a formidable woman who manages the small army of domestic staff. You will review the day's schedule, approve any necessary purchases, and discuss any household issues, from a misbehaving scullery maid to a leaky roof in the West Wing. Then comes the most important meeting of your day, the consultation with your chef. He is likely French, temperamental, and paid more than a university professor. He is an artist, and you are his patron. Together, you will not merely plan meals, you will architect experiences. You will review the menus for the coming days. The family dinner for tonight, the luncheon you are hosting tomorrow, the grand dinner party planned for next week. The chef will present his ideas, perhaps sketched out in elegant script. For Madame's luncheon tomorrow, I propose a consommé printanier, followed by a mousseline of sole with a sauce normande. For the main, some delicate squab, roasted simply. And to finish, a charlotte russe. You will discuss the availability of ingredients. Are the asparagus from France sufficiently tender? Has the fresh shipment of caviar arrived? This is not a question of budget. It is a question of perfection. Your reputation rests on the quality of your table, and by extension, on the genius of your chef. And then comes luncheon. While your husband dines at his club, you host your own gathering. This is a distinctly feminine space. The morning room or a smaller, sunnier dining room is used. The guests are the wives and daughters of your husband's business partners and social equals. And the meal is a masterclass in subtle warfare. The food for a ladies' luncheon is a delicate counterpoint to the masculine fare of the clubs. It is lighter, prettier, more intricate. The performance here is not one of robust power, but of refined taste and effortless elegance. The meal will still consist of multiple courses, perhaps 4 or 5, but each is a miniature work of art. The meal might begin with a clear, shimmering bouillon or a chilled fruit soup, served in exquisite porcelain cups. Then, a course of fish, perhaps a single poached scallop in a shell, or a small, perfect fillet of flounder. The main course would be something like chicken breasts in a cream sauce, or sweetbreads prepared in a delicate pastry case. These are foods that can be eaten with minimal effort, without disturbing one's posture or conversation. Salads are common, but not as we know them. They are often complex constructions, molded things like tomato aspic jellies, or chicken salads bound with mayonnaise and served in a hollowed-out pineapple. They are designed to be visually stunning. And the conversation, like the food, is a delicate dance. Over plates of lobster Newburg and sips of chilled white wine, information is exchanged, alliances are formed, and reputations are subtly shredded. The quality of your food, the smoothness of your service, the beauty of your floral arrangements, all are being silently judged. A slightly overcooked piece of fish or a clumsy footman could be the subject of gossip for weeks. Your luncheon is your battlefield, and your weapons are jellied consommé and perfectly polished silver. Desserts are elaborate fantasies of spun sugar, cream, and fruit. Intricate cakes, towering croquembouche, or delicate ice creams and sorbets molded into fanciful shapes like flowers or birds. After the meal, you will retire to the drawing room for coffee and tiny, jewel-like petit fours. This meal, this light lunch, is as critical to the family's success as any deal made on the stock exchange. It is here that matches are subtly arranged, that social invitations are secured, that the very fabric of high society is woven and rewoven. It is a meal that looks like a watercolor painting, but has the strategic density of a chess match. It is anything but casual. It is work. And for you, the lady of the house, your career depends on it. To understand the meals that appear, as if by magic, on your table, you must journey away from the gilded parlors and silent dining rooms. You must descend. Down the narrow, steep back staircase, past the butler's pantry with its silver safes and stacks of china, and into the very heart of the house, the kitchen. This is not the bright, open-plan space of modern dreams. This is the fiery, churning gut of the Gilded Age mansion. Welcome to the underworld. The air down here is thick, a permanent fog of coal smoke from the massive cast-iron range, the smell of boiling stocks, roasting meat, simmering sauces, and human sweat. The ceilings are low, the floors are stone, and the walls are often damp. This is a world of noise and heat. The clang of copper pots, the relentless chop-chop-chop of knives on wooden blocks, the hiss of water hitting a hot surface, and the shouted orders of the chef. The kitchen is a rigid hierarchy, a miniature kingdom with an absolute monarch. At its apex is the chef. He is almost certainly a man, and almost certainly French. He is a tyrant, an artist, a god in his own domain. He does not perform the menial labor. He commands, he tastes, he finishes. He stands at the center of the storm, a clean white apron over his tailored suit, wielding a tasting spoon like a scepter. He is the only servant who speaks directly to the lady of the house as a near equal, an artist consulting his patron. Beneath him is the first cook, likely a woman, who translates his visions into reality. She manages the day-to-day running of the range, supervises the junior staff, and does much of the most skilled cooking. She is the engine of this whole operation. Below her are the kitchen maids, young women who are responsible for the endless, back-breaking prep work, peeling potatoes, plucking chickens, scaling fish, shelling peas. Their hands are raw, their days are 16 hours long. And at the very bottom of this pyramid, in the scullery, a small, wet, perpetually dim annex to the kitchen, is the scullery maid. Congratulations, you've just been hired. Your world is reduced to a single, monstrous stone sink. From dawn until late at night, you will stand here, your hands plunged into greasy, lukewarm water, scrubbing the endless tide of pots, pans, and plates that flows down from the world above. Your view is a grimy window looking out onto a brick wall. Your hands will never be clean again. You are the unseen, unthanked foundation upon which the entire glittering edifice of Gilded Age dining rests. The technology here is both impressive and brutal. The range is a behemoth of iron and fire, with multiple ovens, warming drawers, and a flat top that is a mosaic of different temperatures. It requires constant feeding with coal, and managing its heat is a high art. There is likely an icebox, a large wooden cabinet insulated with cork or charcoal, which requires daily deliveries of massive blocks of ice, hauled in by an iceman and broken down to fit. This is the only form of refrigeration. The tools are tools of mass production. Giant copper stockpots, some so large they have their own spigots. Intricate molds for jellies, aspics, and ice creams. An arsenal of specialized knives. A bain-marie, a large pan of hot water used to keep sauces at a perfect, even temperature. It is a factory dedicated to the production of a single, perishable product, your dinner. The flow of work is relentless. The day starts before dawn, preparing for breakfast. As soon as the breakfast dishes come down, preparation for luncheon begins. The moment luncheon is cleared, the serious work for the multi-course dinner starts. There is no pause. The kitchen staff eats their own meals in shifts, standing up, their food consisting of the cheapest cuts of meat, leftover vegetables, and day-old bread. They eat the scraps and byproducts of the paradise they create for you. This separation is absolute. There are two sets of everything. The back stairs and the front stairs. The servants' hall and the dining room. The kitchen's chaotic, sensory reality and the dining room's silent, ordered illusion. The food that appears on your plate is the result of this hidden, frantic, and often brutal labor. Every perfectly turned vegetable, every clear consommé, every flawlessly roasted bird is born from this hot, noisy, subterranean world. The effortless elegance you experience upstairs is purchased with the exhaustion and anonymity of the dozen people toiling down here. It is the great, unspoken secret of your home. The magic trick is that you, in the dining room, never have to see, smell, or even think about the reality of its creation. You just pull the cord, and the feast appears. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the city. The gas lamps are lit by a lamplighter on the street, and inside your home, a footman moves from room to room, touching a taper to the gas jets, bringing a soft, golden glow to the house. The day's social labors and business dealings are done. It is time for the main event, the anchor of your daily ritual, the family dinner. You might imagine that with no guests to impress, the evening meal would be a relaxed affair. A time to unwind, to shed the formal armor of the day. You would be profoundly wrong. The family dinner is perhaps the most telling performance of all, because the audience is yourselves. It is a nightly rehearsal of your own status, a reinforcement of the codes and behaviors that define your class. The ritual begins before the meal. You ascend to your dressing room, where your valet or lady's maid has laid out your evening attire. You do not wear the same clothes you wore during the day. For a man, this means changing into a formal dinner jacket, or tuxedo. For a woman, a specific dinner dress, less grand than a ball gown but still made of silk or satin, often with a lower neckline and adorned with lace and jewels. Changing for dinner is not optional. It is a sign of respect for the ritual you are about to perform. You descend to the drawing room for a pre-dinner cocktail, a relatively new American custom. A dry martini, perhaps. Here you might meet your spouse, and your older children if they are of age. Conversation is polite, formal. You do not discuss unpleasant or controversial topics. You speak of the opera, of a new book, of the upcoming season in Newport. At the appointed hour, the butler appears at the doorway and announces, in a low, respectful tone, dinner is served. You proceed, in a formal procession, into the dining room. Not the smaller morning room of breakfast, but the grand, baronial dining room. It is a cavern of dark, polished wood, perhaps with a vast oil painting of a dead ancestor glowering down from the wall. The table is immense, capable of seating 30, but tonight it is set for only 3 or 4. The vast emptiness only serves to heighten the formality. The table is a work of art. A damask tablecloth so white it hurts the eyes. An elaborate floral centerpiece. Candelabras whose flames are reflected in a constellation of polished silver and crystal. At each place setting is a formidable array of cutlery, multiple forks to the left, multiple knives and spoons to the right, a row of smaller forks and spoons above the plate. Each has a specific purpose. You are expected to know which fork is for the fish, which for the meat, which for the salad. To use the wrong one is a sign of poor breeding. You take your seats. A footman stands behind each chair. The meal begins. A simple family dinner would typically consist of 6 to 8 courses. It is a scaled-down version of a banquet, but still monumental by any modern standard. First, oysters or clams on the half-shell. Or perhaps a small canopy. They are placed before you and cleared away in silence. Second, the soup. A clear consommé or a thick, creamy bisque. You must know how to eat it, spooning away from your body, sipping silently from the side of the spoon. Third, the fish course. A single piece of poached salmon or broiled sole, served with a delicate sauce. Fourth, the main event, the entree. This is often the roast. A crown roast of lamb, a side of beef, or a whole roasted turkey. The butler or the man of the house will carve it at a sideboard, a display of masculine skill. It is served with multiple, intricate vegetable side dishes. Fifth, there may be a game course. A small bird, like quail or squab, for each person. A testament to your access to country estates and the hunt. Sixth, the salad. Served after the main course, in the French style, to cleanse the palate. Seventh, the dessert. Something elaborate. A molded ice cream, a complex pudding, a tart, or a cake. Finally, a course of fruit and cheese, served with port wine. Each course is served on a fresh plate. The footmen move in silent, synchronized choreography. They serve from the left, clear from the right. Your wine glass is never empty. You never pour anything yourself. You never pass a dish. The food simply appears before you. The atmosphere is one of profound, oppressive silence, punctuated by the gentle click of silver on china. Conversation is stilted, formal. Children are to be seen and not heard. This is not a time for family bonding. It is a lesson in etiquette, in self-control, in the performance of civility. Welcome to the loneliest feast in the world. This is your casual Tuesday night. A marathon of consumption, governed by 1,000 tiny rules, where the food is magnificent and the emotional connection is nowhere to be found. So, the question hangs in the air, thick as the sauce on your squab, was there ever a truly casual meal? Was there any escape from this relentless theater of formality? The answer is yes, but the Gilded Age concept of casual is a universe away from our own. Their informality was, itself, a highly structured and serviced affair. Let's consider the picnic. The word conjures images of a simple blanket on the grass, a wicker basket with some sandwiches. Forget that immediately. For you, a picnic is a military-style operation. It is an opportunity to perform your wealth in the natural setting of a park or your country estate. A team of servants is dispatched ahead of time. They transport tables, chairs, linens, porcelain, silver, and crystal to the chosen spot. They set up a full, multi-course meal, often cooked on portable stoves. You and your guests arrive later, by carriage, to find a complete outdoor dining room waiting for you. You will be served cold roasted chicken, elaborate salads, pâtés, champagne cooled in a stream, and delicate pastries. You are roughing it, in the sense that there is a possibility a bee might interrupt your champagne. The labor is simply hidden more thoroughly, the logistics more complex. The casual nature of the picnic lies only in the novelty of the setting, not in any reduction of service or quality. What about a midnight snack? In our world, this means stumbling to the refrigerator and foraging for leftovers in the glow of its single bulb. In your world, it is an impossibility. First, you would never set foot in the kitchen, that foreign, downstairs territory. Second, the icebox is not a magical portal of instant gratification. It is a dark, cold box. The food within is unprepared. If you felt a pang of hunger after returning from the opera, you would ring for a servant. A sleepy-eyed footman or maid would appear, and you would request something. They would then go down to the dark, cold kitchen, light a stove, and prepare a small meal for you. Perhaps some broth, a sandwich, or some warm milk. Your casual snack requires waking another human being from their precious few hours of sleep. It is still an act of command and service. Perhaps the closest you get to a truly casual meal is the supper, served late at night, after the theater or a ball. These were often less structured than dinner. Instead of a sit-down, multi-course affair, it might be a buffet. A long table in the ballroom or library would be laden with platters of food, cold meats, lobster salads, oysters, cakes, and champagne. Guests would serve themselves, a rare novelty. But even this was a performance. It was a chance to display overwhelming abundance, to show that your resources were so vast you could produce a feast at a moment's notice, even after midnight. The casualness was an illusion, a different kind of spectacle. The only truly informal act of eating might be a moment of personal rebellion. A child sneaking a cookie from a jar in the butler's pantry. You, the lady of the house, perhaps plucking a perfect strawberry from a bowl as you pass through the dining room, eating it with your fingers when no one is looking. These small, stolen moments of direct, unmediated contact with food are the exception that proves the rule. They are tiny fissures in the monolithic structure of your daily life. For 99% of your eating experiences, a servant is the necessary intermediary between you and your food. True casualness, the kind that involves your own hands and your own choices in the moment, is a luxury you have paid to eliminate from your life. It is a freedom you no longer possess. Why? Why this relentless, exhausting, and frankly, absurd amount of food and formality, day in and day out? To understand the Gilded Age plate, you must understand the psychology of the Gilded Age mind. This was not merely about nourishment. In fact, nourishment was the least of its concerns. This was about something much deeper. It was about fear, power, and the desperate construction of a new identity. Let's start with the power. The sociologist Thorstein Veblen, writing at the peak of this era, coined a term for it: conspicuous consumption. The food on your table was not just for eating, it was for displaying. It was a visible, edible manifestation of your wealth and power. Serving out-of-season fruit, like strawberries in winter, was not about taste. It was a declaration that you had bent nature and geography to your will, using the power of hothouses and refrigerated transport. Having a French chef was not just about enjoying French cuisine, it was about demonstrating that you could afford to import the highest form of culinary status directly from Europe. Every course, every dish, was a paragraph in a story about your own success. The sheer quantity of it, the monumental waste it implied, was the point. It said to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, I am so wealthy that I can afford to serve 10 times more food than my family can possibly eat, and I will throw the rest away without a second thought. In a world where millions lived on the edge of starvation, this waste was the ultimate symbol of power. It was a deliberate, calculated insult to the very concept of scarcity. Then, there is the fear. Many of the great Gilded Age fortunes were new. You might be a first or second generation millionaire. Your father or grandfather might have been a farmer, a peddler, a man who knew hunger intimately. The memory of the Civil War, with its shortages and hardships, was still fresh. The terror of poverty, of falling from grace, was a ghost that haunted these marble mansions. The mountains of food, the endless courses, the armies of servants, they were a bulwark against this fear. They were a way of physically piling up evidence to prove that you had escaped the precariousness of the past. You ate and ate and ate, to reassure yourself that you would never be hungry again. And finally, there is the simple, crushing reality of boredom. If you were a woman of the Gilded Age elite, your life was a cage, albeit a gilded one. You had no career, no profession. Your intelligence and energy were channeled into the single, all-consuming project of society. The daily rituals of dining provided a much-needed structure to otherwise empty days. The morning consultation with the chef, the formal luncheon, the changing for dinner, the slow procession of courses, these were the tent poles that held up your waking hours. The food was a form of entertainment, a drama that unfolded 3 times a day. It was a substitute for a life of purpose. You didn't run a company, so you ran a household. You didn't create art, so you commissioned edible sculptures from your chef. The endless, elaborate meals filled the silence, not just in the dining room, but in your own life. The Gilded Age plate, therefore, was a psychological battlefield. It was a place where new money desperately tried to perform old-world aristocracy. It was where the fear of falling was masked by mountains of pâté. It was a stage where women, denied other outlets for their ambition, waged complex social wars with soup spoons and sauce boats. It was never, ever just about dinner. It was about defining who you were in a rapidly changing, insecure, and fantastically wealthy new world. The lights in the grand dining room are finally extinguished. The last crumbs have been brushed from the tablecloth, the last wine glass polished and put away. But the story of this food does not end there. Every action has a consequence, and the consequences of the Gilded Age diet were profound, written on the bodies of the people who ate it and the society that supported it. Let's begin with your own body. You are part of a class suffering from a host of what were called fashionable diseases. Gout, once known as the disease of kings, becomes rampant. It is an excruciatingly painful form of arthritis caused by high levels of uric acid in the blood, a direct result of a diet heavy in red meat, organ meats, and alcohol. Your foot, swollen and red, resting on a velvet stool, becomes a status symbol of its own, a painful testament to your rich diet. Dyspepsia, or chronic indigestion, is a constant companion. Your gut, assaulted daily by a relentless parade of rich, fatty foods, is in a state of perpetual rebellion. The medicine cabinets in your marble bathroom are filled with tonics and elixirs promising relief. Men, in particular, develop the robber baron belly, a proud paunch that signals a life of sedentary wealth and abundant food. Corseted and confined, women suffer their own internal miseries, their organs compressed while being filled with impossibly rich fare. This is the physical price of conspicuous consumption. You are literally being consumed from the inside out by your own diet. Then there is the staggering, almost criminal, amount of waste. Remember that multi-course dinner? The food that was not eaten, the majority of it, was not saved for the next day. The standards of the elite household demanded that everything be fresh, prepared for that meal alone. Perfectly good roasts, untouched salads, entire platters of food would be scraped from the fine china and thrown into the rubbish. This, while just a few blocks away, in the teeming tenements of the Lower East Side, families were starving. The garbage cans behind your mansion contained more edible food than the pantries of the poor. This chasm between extreme excess and extreme want was a defining feature of the era, a moral paradox that the wealthy chose to ignore by simply never looking. And what of the human cost, the toll on the small army that makes this lifestyle possible? Let's return to the scullery maid, her hands permanently raw from the harsh soap and hot water. Or the kitchen maids, working 16-hour days in suffocating heat. Or the footmen, who had to stand perfectly still for hours on end, enduring verbal abuse for the slightest misstep. Their lives were consumed by your needs. They lived in small, cramped rooms in the attic or basement, ate your leftovers, and had almost no personal freedom. Their exhaustion was the invisible ingredient in every single dish served. The price of your effortless life was their effort-filled one. They fueled the machine, and the machine, in turn, used them up, replacing them when they broke down, just like any other part. Spoiler alert, there was no pension plan for a worn-out housemaid. The system was designed to extract the maximum amount of labor for the minimum amount of cost, a microcosm of the very industrial capitalism that generated your family's fortune in the first place. So the legacy of the Gilded Age plate is a complex one. It's a legacy of physical ailment, of monumental inequality, and of human exploitation. The beauty of the food on the table was directly proportional to the ugliness of the system required to produce it. The silent, graceful performance in the dining room was made possible by the noisy, brutal reality in the kitchen. It was a dream built on a nightmare, a feast on the edge of a famine. And every bite you took was a vote in favor of keeping that system exactly as it was. So we returned to where we started, in the quiet of a Gilded Age morning. The breakfast is being cleared away. The luncheon is being planned. The great, relentless machine of the household is churning, preparing for the next performance. We asked if there was a casual meal for the wealthy of this era. And the answer, we have found, is no. Not in any way we would understand it. The entire architecture of their daily life was built to eliminate the casual, the spontaneous, the unmediated. To be wealthy in the Gilded Age was to live a life encased in ritual, buffered by the labor of others. Their food was not fuel for the body, but a language of power, a shield against insecurity, and a script for a life of structured leisure. From the first sip of morning coffee poured by a footman to the last crumb of the midnight snack prepared by a roused maid, every act of consumption was a reinforcement of a rigid, unyielding hierarchy. You were at the top, and an army of people existed below to ensure you never had to lift a finger. The Gilded Age plate was a stage. On it were performed dramas of social ambition, comedies of excessive taste, and tragedies of unseen labor. It was a world where a simple family dinner required the same logistical precision as a small military campaign. Where casual meant having servants set up a full dining room in the middle of a park. Today, we wrestle with our own food anxieties. We count calories, we worry about organic labels, we photograph our meals for a different kind of social performance. But the world of the Gilded Age wealthy is a powerful, unsettling mirror. It shows us a time when food was untethered from the concept of need and became a pure instrument of status. It was a world of profound material abundance and, one can't help but suspect, profound spiritual emptiness. They built mansions of marble and mountains of food to fill a void that no amount of wealth could ever truly satisfy. They consumed their world, one perfectly arranged, terribly lonely bite at a time. You are standing in a forest. But it is not the green, vibrant forest of summer. It is a world of stark gray and brilliant white. The air is so cold it feels sharp in your lungs, a fragile, crystalline thing that could shatter with a single cough. Every branch above you is a black line drawn against a steel sky, burdened with a fresh coat of snow. The silence is immense, a heavy blanket broken only by the soft crunch of your own moccasins on the powder. You are hungry. Not the casual, fleeting hunger of a missed lunch, but a deep, gnawing ache that has been your constant companion for weeks. This is the end of a long, hard winter. The dried venison is tough and stringy, the stored nuts and seeds are dwindling, their flavor a dusty memory. This is the season the old ones call the hunger moon. And yet, you are not here for game. You are not checking a trapline. You are here to listen. You stand perfectly still beside the broad, patient trunk of a maple tree. And then you hear it. A sound so quiet it is almost a feeling. A slow, rhythmic plink, plink, plink. It is the sound of life returning to a frozen world. It is the sound of water, defying the ice. It is the sound of sap, the very lifeblood of the tree, beginning to move. It is the promise of sweetness in a world that has been bitter for far too long. We pour this sweetness, thick and amber, over our pancakes and waffles without a second thought. It sits in our pantries in charming jugs, a simple condiment, a weekend luxury. We think of it as syrup. A topping. An indulgence. And because it is so common, so readily available to us, we project that abundance back into the past. We imagine teepees and longhouses with pots of syrup always bubbling, a sweet and constant comfort against the cold. But the story of this liquid gold is not one of abundance. It is a story of incredible labor, of precise science, and of profound spiritual significance. It is a story not just about what people ate, but about how they survived. So, let's peel back the layers of myth from the bark of history. Just how common was this sweet miracle in the lives of the first peoples of the great northern forests? Was it a daily staple, a constant presence on the tongue? Or was it something else entirely, something far more precious and far more powerful? To understand the answer, you must first understand the world that created the question. You must leave your warm kitchen and return to that cold, silent forest. It is late winter, a time you might call March. The snow is still deep, but the sun, for the first time in months, has a hint of warmth in it. This is the crucial balance, the magic formula, freezing nights and thawing days. This is what makes the sap run. It is a narrow, fleeting window of time, perhaps 4 to 6 weeks, nestled between the deep freeze of winter and the budburst of spring. This is the sugar moon. And for this brief period, your entire world will revolve around the maple tree. The first thing you must do is forget the metal spile, the plastic tubing, the neat, drilled hole. Your tools are of stone and wood and bone. You approach a promising tree, one with a wide girth and a full crown, a sign of its health and vigor. With a sharp stone gouge or a small axe, you do not drill a hole. You make a cut. A long, V-shaped gash in the bark, or perhaps 2 diagonal slashes meeting at a point. It is an injury to the tree, and you know it. This is not a thoughtless taking. It is a request, a partnership. Before the first cut is ever made, you have offered tobacco. You have spoken to the tree, and to the spirits of the forest. You have given thanks for the gift you are about to receive, and you have promised to take only what you need, to not harm the tree beyond its ability to heal. Beneath the point of the V, you insert a small, flattened cedar or sumac chip, a little wooden tongue to guide the dripping sap. And what will catch this precious liquid? Not a galvanized bucket. You have spent the last days of winter preparing the vessels. You have taken the bark of the paper birch, peeling it from the tree in wide, flexible sheets. With an awl made from a deer bone, you have punched holes along the edges. You have used the stringy, durable roots of the spruce tree, split and soaked to make them pliable, to sew the bark into a watertight container. It is a marvel of engineering, a macaque, light enough to carry through deep snow, yet strong enough to hold gallons of liquid. You place this vessel at the base of the tree, positioning it perfectly beneath the drip. And now, the work truly begins. This is not a passive activity. A single healthy maple might give you a gallon or 2 of sap on a good day. But you will not tap just one tree. You will tap dozens. Hundreds, even. Your family's sugar bush might contain 400 or 500 trees, each with its own cut, its own spile, its own collecting bucket. Your days are now a constant circuit, moving from tree to tree through the heavy, wet snow. You empty the clear, cold liquid from the macaques into a larger carrying vessel, also made of birch bark or a hollowed log, which you might drag on a small toboggan. The sap is heavy. The snow is deep. Your legs ache, your back burns. And you must do this every single day, from sunup to sundown. Because if the sap sits too long, or if the weather warms too quickly, it will spoil. All this work will be for nothing. You take a moment to rest, cupping your hands to catch the drip from the spile. You drink deeply. And this is the first part of our answer. What does it taste like? It is not the thick, cloying sweetness of modern syrup. It is water. Clear, clean, cold water, with just the faintest hint of sugar, a whisper of woody vanilla. It is incredibly refreshing. For these few weeks, this sap, this Zienzabakwadabu as the Anishinaabe call it, is your water. You drink it all day long. It is hydrating, full of minerals and nutrients that your body desperately craves after a winter of preserved foods. So, in this very specific sense, for this very short period of time, yes. Maple sap was a daily staple. It was the beverage of the sugar moon. But this is not the end of the story. It is barely the beginning. Because the sap itself is a fleeting gift. The true prize, the food that will last the year, requires a transformation. It requires an alchemy of bark and fire and stone. Now you have a problem of volume. You have collected gallons upon gallons of this faintly sweet water. The ratio is daunting, a fact of physics that no amount of ceremony can change. It takes somewhere between 30 and 40 gallons of sap to make a single gallon of syrup. And you do not have a giant metal cauldron to hang over a fire. If you were to put your precious birch bark container directly over the flames, it would burst into cinders in an instant, taking its contents with it. Welcome to the ingenious, laborious, and frankly dangerous world of pre-contact boiling. You have built a long, roaring fire. Beside it, not over it, rests your boiling trough. This might be a massive vessel made of sawn bark, reinforced with a wooden frame, or it could be a large log, painstakingly hollowed out with controlled fire and stone adzes. It is filled with the sap you have spent all day collecting. Piled in the heart of your fire are dozens of smooth, round, fist-sized stones. You wait until they glow with a ferocious orange heat. Now, for the delicate and perilous part. Using a pair of long wooden tongs, you carefully lift one of these incandescent rocks from the fire. You move quickly, purposefully. You plunge the glowing stone into the trough of sap. The effect is immediate and violent. The sap erupts in a furious hiss. A huge cloud of steam billows up, carrying the sweetening scent of maple through the cold air. The water around the rock boils instantly. You cannot leave it in. You must pull the cooled stone out and replace it with another, and another, and another, in a constant, rhythmic cycle. This is not a passive process of watching a pot boil. It is an active, demanding, and hot job. Sparks fly. The steam scalds your face. A moment of carelessness could mean a severe burn, or dropping a rock and rupturing the precious container, losing everything. For hours, you and your family tend the fire and the trough. The children are tasked with gathering more wood. The elders offer guidance, watching the color and consistency of the liquid. The work is communal. It must be. No single person could sustain this effort. Slowly, painstakingly, the water boils away into steam. The level of the liquid in the trough drops. The color begins to change, from clear to a pale straw, then to a beautiful, translucent gold. The smell in the air intensifies, becoming richer, more complex. It smells of caramel, of vanilla, of the forest floor, of wood smoke. Congratulations. After hours of backbreaking labor, after hauling hundreds of pounds of sap and cycling dozens of glowing hot stones, you have finally done it. You have created maple syrup. It is thick, it is sweet, it is a concentration of all that effort, all that sunlight stored in the tree's wood. It is a moment of triumph. You might dip a stick into the trough and taste it, the intense sweetness a shocking and welcome jolt to your senses. But here is the great deception, the modern misunderstanding that sits at the heart of our question. You have not reached your goal. In fact, if you stop here, you have failed. Why? Think about your world. You have no sterile glass jars, no vacuum seals, no refrigeration. This thick, beautiful syrup, with its high water content and rich sugars, is a perfect breeding ground for mold and bacteria. In the cool air of the sugar camp, it might last for a little while. But as spring truly arrives, it will begin to ferment and spoil. It is heavy. It is liquid. It is difficult to transport. Carrying sloshing containers of syrup through the forest as your people move to the spring fishing grounds is a logistical nightmare. The syrup is not the product. It is merely a step in the process. The real prize, the true staple, is something far more stable, far more portable, and far more versatile. You are not trying to make syrup. You are trying to make sugar. The process must continue. You do not let the fire die down. You add more hot stones, boiling the syrup even further. This is the most critical and dangerous stage. You are watching for the moment of crystallization, what modern sugar makers call sugaring off. The liquid gets thicker and thicker, the bubbles become slow and heavy. An elder, someone who has done this 100 times, knows the signs. They might drizzle a little of the boiling liquid onto the snow. If it hardens instantly into a brittle taffy, the time is right. Now, a new kind of work begins. The trough is pulled away from the fire. With long wooden paddles, you and your family begin to stir the superheated, thick syrup. You have to stir it constantly, vigorously, as it begins to cool. This is called graining. The agitation encourages the formation of sugar crystals. The liquid turns opaque, grainy, its color lightening to a creamy tan. It is a frantic, focused effort. If you stop, it could harden into a useless, rock-hard mass in the bottom of the trough. As you stir, the last of the steam escapes, and the mixture thickens into a damp, granular sand. Before it cools completely, you scoop this hot, wet sugar into molds. These are not elaborate tin shapes. They are beautiful, functional objects from the world around you. The elegant scroll of a birch bark cone. The smooth, hollowed-out cup of a large seashell. The intricate patterns of a carved wooden bowl. You pack the sugar in tightly, pressing it down. And then you simply wait. As it cools, the residual moisture evaporates, and the sugar hardens into a solid, dry block. What you have now is a cake of maple sugar. It is hard, dense, and almost completely dry. Kept away from moisture, it will last indefinitely. It is not a sticky liquid, but a solid block of pure energy. It is lightweight and portable. A hunter can tuck a piece into his pouch and carry it for weeks. A family can store these sugar cakes in a birch bark box, a food source that will not spoil, a taste of spring in the middle of autumn. Spoiler alert, this is the answer to our question. The true staple was never the syrup. It was the sugar. This crystalline, stable, portable block was the caloric currency of the forest. It was a trade good, a seasoning, a medicine, and a miracle of food preservation technology. So, now that we have the true product, the hard maple sugar, we can finally ask the question in its correct form. How was this sugar used? Was it consumed daily? The answer is a nuanced and fascinating yes. But not in the way you might think. You would not sit down and eat a bowl of maple sugar for breakfast. That would be like eating a bowl of salt. Instead, it was the foundational seasoning of the culinary year. It was the primary source of sweetness in a diet that had very few. Imagine you are on a long journey, a hunting trip or a trading expedition. You cannot carry heavy, perishable foods. What you carry is a pouch of no cake or journey cake. This is corn, harvested in the fall, parched until dry and hard, and then pounded into a fine, granular powder. By itself, it is bland, dusty sustenance. But you have mixed your powdered corn with a generous amount of shaved or pounded maple sugar. Now, you have the original trail mix. It is lightweight, energy-dense, and needs no cooking. You can eat a handful dry, or mix it with a little water or snow to make a gruel. The corn provides the substance, the protein and complex carbohydrates. The maple sugar provides the instant energy, the calories your body needs for hard travel. It makes the food not just edible, but delicious. In this form, as a critical ingredient in travel food, maple sugar was indeed a staple. Now, imagine it is summer. You are at the fishing camp. You have smoked and dried the fish to preserve it for the coming winter. How do you make it more palatable? You might create a sauce by dissolving a chunk of maple sugar in water, perhaps with some crushed berries. You use this to glaze the fish as it smokes, creating a sweet, savory, and protective coating. When you are stewing meat or vegetables, you add a piece of maple sugar to the pot, just as a modern chef might add a pinch of sugar to balance the acidity of tomatoes. It brightens flavors. It deepens complexity. It adds a background note of smoky sweetness to everything from beaver tail to wild leeks. It was also a critical component of medicine. Mixed with the ground roots of plants like wild ginger or the bark of the wild cherry, it made bitter medicinal compounds palatable enough for a sick child to take. It was a source of quick energy for women in labor or for warriors before a raid. Dissolved in hot water, it created a soothing, comforting drink for someone with a sore throat or a fever. It was, in essence, the spoonful of sugar that helped the medicine go down long before Mary Poppins ever existed. And it was used to celebrate. At feasts and ceremonies, special foods were prepared. Wild rice might be boiled with maple sugar and berries. Cornbreads were sweetened with it. It was a flavor of joy, of community, of gratitude. So, was it a daily staple? Yes. Not as a meal in itself, but as a ubiquitous ingredient. It was the salt, the pepper, the primary spice, the energy drink, and the sweetener of the Great Lakes and Northeast forests. It was in everything. The taste of maple was the taste of home. Its absence would be more noticeable than its presence. Forgetting your sourdough starter is an inconvenience. Forgetting your maple sugar would be a culinary and nutritional disaster. But to reduce this sugar to a mere ingredient, however essential, is to miss its deepest role. The process of making maple sugar was not just a chore on a to-do list. It was the central social and spiritual event of the late winter. The sugar moon was not a time of isolated, individual labor. It was a time when the entire community came together. After the long, cold months of winter, where families were often isolated in their winter hunting camps, the move to the sugar bush was the first great communal gathering of the year. You would leave your winter lodge, and the entire village would relocate to the stands of maple trees that had been in your family's care for generations. This was the sugar camp, a temporary village that sprang up for a few weeks each year, bustling with life and purpose. Everyone had a role. The men might do the initial heavy work of tapping the trees and hauling the first large loads of sap. The women, as the masters of the household and the keepers of food knowledge, would typically oversee the delicate and crucial process of boiling, stirring, and graining. They held the knowledge passed down through their mothers and grandmothers, the ability to read the sap, the steam, and the fire. The children, free from the confines of the winter lodge, would run through the camp, their job to gather the endless supply of firewood needed to keep the boiling fires hot. The elders, too old for the heaviest labor, would sit by the fire, mending tools, telling stories, and offering their deep wells of experience to the younger generations. Imagine the atmosphere. The air is thick with the sweet-smelling steam and wood smoke. The forest, which was silent just days before, now echoes with the sound of voices, of laughter, of axes splitting wood, of the constant, rhythmic hiss of hot stones plunging into sap. At night, the camp glows with dozens of fires. This is not just a food processing plant. It is a festival. It is a reunion. It is a reaffirmation of community bonds after a season of separation and hardship. And at the heart of it all was a profound spiritual reverence. This was not just sugar. This was a gift. The Anishinaabe stories tell of their cultural hero, Nanabozo, who found that the maple trees originally produced pure, thick syrup. Humans could simply break a branch and let the sweet liquid drip into their mouths. They grew lazy, lying under the trees all day, neglecting their duties, their families, their ceremonies. To teach them a lesson, Nanabozo diluted the syrup with water, turning it into the thin, watery sap you collect today. He did not take the gift away entirely, but he ensured that to receive its blessing, his people would have to work for it. They would have to come together, to cooperate, to give thanks. The story is a charter for the sugar camp itself. It explains not just the sap, but the social structure required to process it. The first sap collected was never consumed. It was offered back. You would sprinkle it at the base of the tree. You would offer it to the fire, to the four directions, to the Creator. It was an act of reciprocity, a fundamental principle of indigenous worldview. You do not just take, you give back, you acknowledge the source of the gift. The entire process, from the first offering of tobacco to the last cake of sugar being stored away, was framed by ceremony and gratitude. The sugar was a physical manifestation of the Creator's love, and the work was a prayer in motion. So when we ask about its role, we cannot separate the food from the festival, the calories from the culture, the sugar from the sacred. So what changed? How did we get from these hard, sacred cakes of sugar to the bottle of amber syrup in your pantry? The answer, like so many stories on this continent, involves contact, trade, and technology. When European settlers arrived, they were astonished by this indigenous technology. They had sugar, of course, but it came from sugarcane, a crop of the tropics, produced through the brutal engine of slavery and shipped across oceans at great expense. The idea of a sweet sugar that grew on trees in the northern forests was a revelation. The fur trade brought metal. And the single most transformative piece of technology for the world of maple was the iron or copper kettle. Suddenly, the slow, laborious, and dangerous process of hot rock boiling was obsolete. You could hang a kettle directly over a fire. You could boil down vast quantities of sap with a fraction of the labor and time. The efficiency skyrocketed. This new technology had a profound effect. It made the production of maple sugar and syrup far easier, and it shifted the focus. Settlers had a taste for liquid sweeteners, for treacle and molasses. They were less interested in the hard cakes of sugar and more interested in the syrup. Indigenous producers, responding to this new and lucrative market, began to adapt their production. They started making more syrup because that's what the traders wanted to buy. The syrup, once just an intermediate step, began to become an end product in its own right. Congratulations, you've just witnessed the birth of the pancake breakfast. The ease of production with metal kettles, combined with the settler market's preference for a liquid topping, slowly transformed the ancient practice. Over generations, the syrup became the iconic product, while the hard sugar cake, once the true prize, faded into a more specialized, traditional role. The modern bottle of maple syrup is, in a way, a ghost. It is the echo of a process whose original purpose has been forgotten by most of us. We have inherited the flavor, but we have lost the context. We celebrate the result, but we have forgotten the reason. The syrup was the means, not the end. The sugar was the treasure. We began our journey in a cold, hungry forest, listening for the first drips of life. We have stood in the steam of the boiling trough, we have felt the burn in our arms from stirring the graining sugar, and we have sat by the communal fire of the sugar camp, a society reborn in the sweet smoke of the sugar moon. We have learned that the question, was maple syrup a staple, is the wrong question. It is like asking if flour is a staple. The answer is yes, but no one eats flour by the spoonful. It is what you do with it that matters. Maple sap was the life-giving water of a short, transitional season. But maple sugar, its concentrated, stable, and portable form, was a true cornerstone of the indigenous foodway in the northern forests. It was not a meal, but it was in almost every meal. It was the flavor that balanced the savory and masked the bitter. It was the quick energy that fueled the hunter and sustained the traveler. It was the preservative that made food last, and the medicine that made healing possible. And it was far more than food. It was the sweet glue that brought a community together after a long winter of isolation, the reason for the first festival of the year. The process of its creation was a lesson in hard work, a prayer of gratitude, and a celebration of survival. So the next time you pick up that jug of maple syrup, let your mind drift past the image of a pancake stack. See, instead, the hard, dark, crystalline cake of sugar. See the birch bark makak, the glowing hot stone, the stirring paddle. Think of it not as a topping, but as a foundation. The taste on your tongue is not just sweetness. It is the taste of resilience. It is the stored energy of a patient tree, unlocked by generations of profound and intimate knowledge. It is the flavor of a community, a ceremony, a worldview. It is the enduring taste of a sweetness that had to be earned.